Hey guys, welcome back to the movie summary. Beginning of the movie, we see the Whip. He had been drinking heavily all night. He is a pilot. He had a flight to take off in an hour. But he was not in a situation to take off the flight. So he takes cocaine. Then he leaves for the flight. In the cockpit he meets Ken, his co-pilot. This plane is scheduled to depart for Atlanta. Whip asks the air hostess to give him a painkiller. Because he hasn't slept in 2 days. He tells Ken about this. Now we see a girl named Nicole. She is a drug addict. She goes to a drug dealer. The dealer gives her the drug. He says that these drugs are very powerful and should be taken in small quantities. Whip takes off the plane. Due to inclement weather, the flight is subject to turbulence. Then he turns off the autopilot and takes off the plane manually. Passengers are very scared due to excessive turbulence. Whip wants to take the plane above the clouds. Ken doesn't like Whip's decision. After a while they somehow get the plane above the clouds. Now the passengers in the plane will not be afraid. Then the Whip apologizes to the passenger for the inconvenience. He adds alcohol to the juice bottle next to him. Then he drinks it. After a while a lady comes into the cockpit. Then the Whip is lying down. The plane is running on autopilot. After a while, a message comes from the control room saying that the plane landing area is clear. Ken presses some switches to land the plane. That's when the plane goes out of control. All the passengers are screaming in fear. Then Whip wakes up. He asks Ken to eject the luggage from the plane. The plane's hydraulic system is also damaged. Hence controlling the plane becomes more difficult. The lady in the cockpit also tries to control the plane. But the plane is out of control. Now there are more turbo lines in the plane. The plane is descending fast. Even so, he is trying hard to make the plane normal. That's when the plane jerks. Hence an air hostess gets injured and falls down. The plane going down very fast. Whip understands that we all die. He wants to record his last words in a black box. Whip wants to give a message to his son. He says, "I love you so much." Then he turns the plane to the left to control the plane again. Then the whole plane reverses. A boy falls because he is not wearing his seatbelt. The boy was saved by an air hostess and she died. Even after being told by the dealer, Nicole takes a large quantity of the drug. Hence she overdoses. 2 men come to take her to the hospital. As soon as they came out, a plane is seen to travel in reverse. Now both the engines of the plane have also failed. The Whip prepares for a crash landing. He sees an empty place. Meanwhile, the plane wing crashes into a building. He then crash lands the plane. While the plane is landing, the Whip is hit by the control panel. The plane split into 2 parts. Many were seriously injured. All of them will be taken to the hospital in an ambulance. The Whip regains consciousness. He is in a hospital. 2 people come to meet the Whip. One man is the Whip's friend, the other man is his boss, Charlie Anderson. Charlie appreciates Whip for landing the plane in such a critical situation. He also praises that out of 102 passengers you saved 96 passengers. The Whip co-pilot is in a coma. After a while, the police come there to record the Whip's statement. Later he comes outside to smoke. Outside he meets 2 patients. One of them has cancer. Another person is Nicole. There, friendship develops between Whip and Nicole. Whip says to Nicole that he will come to her house. Then the Whip is discharged. A few days later Charlie calls Whip. After checking the medical reports, it is revealed that Whip had been drunk alcohol on the day of the plane crash landing. Hence a case was booked against Charlie's Airlines. Whip now has to meet the lawyer. So Charlie calls him. Then the Whip meets the lawyer. Charlie wants to hide Whip's mistake. Otherwise Charlie's Airlines will have to close. 6 people died because of him. After meeting the lawyer, Whip drinks again in tension. Then he goes to Nicole's house. There, Nicole is forced out of the house by her house owner. Because she did not pay the rent. Whip pushes him. Whip pays rent to the landlord and takes her to his farmhouse. Whip is drinking. The media tries to contact him. But he does not meet the media. One day he meets a flight air hostess. She says co-pilot Ken is alive. But both his legs were damaged to a large extent. He then goes to talk to Kentucky there. Ken's wife becomes very emotional for Ken's survival. Then Nicole takes the Whip to the rehabilitation center. Nicole wants to give up her drug addiction. Also she wants to get rid of Whip's drinking addiction. After a while Whip gets boring. So he leaves from there. Night Nicole comes home. Whip is in the garage. She says that if we want to get rid of our addictions, we should go to a rehabilitation center. Hearing this, Whip gets angry and scolds her. Then Nicole leaves his house. Next day Whip comes home. Then there is the media. He goes to his wife's house to escape from the media. She knows that Whip has a drinking addiction. So there were many quarrels between them. She thinks John is responsible for the crash landing. She is very angry with him. Later, the fight starts again between them. As soon as he steps out of the house, the media is in front of him. He was drunk. Therefore, Whip gives strange answers to the questions asked by the media. Hence his case becomes more weak. Charlie knows this. He tells him that I'll stay with you until the hearing date with. You should not drink alcohol till then. However, Whip drinks alcohol without Charlie knowing. On the day of the hearing date, Charlie comes into the Whip room. Whip is not conscious because he drinks too much. Then Charlie brings the cocaine. Charlie regains consciousness after taking cocaine. Later they all go to court. The lawyer on behalf of Charlie in court tries hard to prove the Whip is innocent. The lawyer proves that the cause of the plane crash was an air hostess. Actually, that air hostess lost her life while saving a baby. Hearing all this, Whip becomes very emotional. It was his fault that such a big accident happened. Then he decides to admit his mistake. Soon he said, I drank alcohol on the flight. They lose the case in court. The punishment for Whip is reduced by admitting the truth. In the next scene, we see Whip in jail. He is talking to his fellow prisoners. It has been 13 months since he was in jail. Now he has completely abstained from drinking. A few days later, Whip's son comes to meet him. Whip is very happy that his son has arrived. Later they both talk together. This is how this movie ends. 99% people watch my videos without subscribing. I am working hard to make these videos. My humble request to subscribe my channel to grow.